Ashish, thank you so much for willing to chat with me today. It's really exciting to have you. I know you've been a techie all your life in the true sense. So why don't you go ahead and give a quick introduction about yourself for the listeners?
Sure, Krishna, and nice to see you again today. To introduce myself, I'm a distinguished engineer at Quintrix Systems. I lead a group of architects as part of the technology strategy organization at Quintrix. The mission of this group is to provide architectural solutions for problems that are inherently complex or problems that have a broad impact. That is, they impact pretty much every product or team at Quintrix. Now, prior to this role, I've played the role of an architect for Quintrix's workspace platform, as well as our endpoint management and VDI products. And on the personal side, as you know, I live in sunny South Florida, been married for over 20 years now, fingers crossed. And we have two boys, one in high school and one in middle school.
Awesome, awesome. It is really exciting because Quintrix is such a household name, quote unquote, right? And I don't know of a major organization that probably doesn't use it. It is quite pervasive. If not everybody, most Fortune 500 companies possibly use it, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can say, again, pretty much all, I would say all, if not all, of the Fortune 500 organizations use one or the other Quintrix products.
Right, right. And it has evolved as well, obviously, with time in so many forms. So you worked, Ashish, in mobile and cloud technologies even before that became mainstream, right? Everybody talks about it today like it's nothing, but you've been working on it for several years. What has changed in the last 5 to 10 years as far as evolution of these technologies are concerned?
Yeah, so to be honest, mobile and cloud are really not that disconnected anymore. Over the last 5 years or so, these technologies have just become so much more intertwined. So if you may remember back in the early days, a lot of mobile development was done using Objective-C or Java for specific mobile platforms. However, in the last 5 years, with the emergence of technologies like React Native, Xamarin, Flutter, cross-platform development has become so much easier, and that lets developers have one code base for all of their platforms, mobile and desktop, while still being able to provide native experiences or experiences that are consistent with that of the operating system on which the application will be running. Now, in addition, if you see most of the mobile apps today, a lot of the experiences within them, and to some extent, even some of the business logic is delivered through the cloud. And what that means is that your mobile app is very likely just a lightweight container or a shell, which fetches its experience and logic from the cloud on a periodic basis. And as a developer, that is very powerful because it lets you release updates to your applications frequently without having to necessarily release new versions of your applications or your users having to install them. So that's on the mobile side. Now on the cloud side, if you talk about technology, there has been a lot of focus on multi-cloud or to be precise, cloud agnostic development. That is, develop applications that can run on multiple cloud vendors. The obvious reason being that you do not want to be locked into one vendor. But more importantly, if your application can run on multiple clouds at the same time, then you are able to provide an uptime that is higher than what a single cloud vendor can provide.
Right.
Also, and this development is typically done using containerization technologies like Docker and Kubernetes and many others that are being incubated as part of the cloud native computing foundation. Also, in terms of peoples and processes, you will see there's a big shift towards the DevOps mindset. So in any large organization, you'll find like a small engineering team that is responsible for development, testing, deployment, and operations. And that is pretty much the end-to-end life cycle of a service. And as opposed to what used to happen over a decade ago, where a team of developers would write code and then they would throw it over the wall for somebody else to operate it. And this new model, this DevOps model, it just helps with end-to-end, like better end-to-end ownership and accountability. So that's a rather long-winded answer to what's been happening in the last 5 years as far as mobile and cloud are concerned.
Right, right. And it's exciting because it just, the reliability rates have gone up, right? What we call uptime. All of us take our services, whether it's, applications or mobile phones, for granted, because there's almost, never a downtime, right? And we would all probably freak out anytime our Outlook or, mobile service stops working. It happens, but it doesn't really happen that often. So talking about, spreading, diversifying the cloud hosting across multiple systems is one of the things you touched upon, is helping keep the reliability and uptime up, right? And also reducing the risk of what you call, I forget the word that's used for downtime, right? It's
Downtime.
reduces the downtime risk tremendously.
Yeah, as you mentioned, right, the tolerance of users is extremely low, right? So whether you are using consumer services like Netflix or Amazon, or whether you're using enterprise applications, they expect the same in terms of uptime, in terms of experience, right? So when you're talking about uptime in the order of, say, 99.9% or higher, I mean, you really have a few minutes per month where you can afford to be down.
Right.
So you need to do everything in your power so that you don't exceed that budget that's been allocated to you.
And it is now so intertwined with customer service, right? And anytime you have an outage that lasts more than a few seconds or minutes, has an impact on what people think about your organization or your services, right? So it's,
absolutely, yes.
Having had this beautiful experience over the last 20 years working on different technologies, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self or an engineer who's just starting off in enterprise engineering?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, I agree that the world of computer science is really a fascinating world. There is never a dull moment. In terms of what advice I would give myself, or maybe the 20-year-old version of myself, firstly, I would say become a full stack developer. That is, don't limit yourself to just being a front end or a UI developer or a back end or a service developer. Try to do both. Secondly, try to get all the relevant security certifications and stay up to date on that. And that's because, as you know, the security issues in software are very expensive to fix. And they can be very damaging to your reputation and to some extent even to your customer's reputation. So it's upon us to be very proactive upon this and take it seriously. And then lastly, I would say change what you do every few years. And again, that doesn't mean that you have to change companies. In many organizations, in many large organizations, there are opportunities to work on different products or projects. And you should seize those opportunities, as it can just broaden your horizons. So those are the things I would tell myself.